I'd like to welcome you to Change My Relationship podcast. And I have with me again today Liz Woolley. And we are going to be talking about the hidden dangers of online media. I had her on first to hear her story about her son's suicide as a result of playing online video games. And then we talked about the hidden or the toxic, I think it was the toxic dangers of video gaming. And now we're going to be talking about the toxic dangers of online media. And this book is not out yet, but can you put it up there? She's got a prototype of what it's going to look like, and it will be available on Amazon. And it's got quite a bit of information. We're going to go over some of it today, but we will not be able to go over all of it. So I'll welcome her.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're
Hard, I
welcome.
appreciate it.
She's got a really long bio. I've read it. She's been in information technology career for 30 years. She's done all kinds of stuff with that. Then she's got an extensive background in AA and a couple other 12-step programs. She's been on all kinds of national news programs and also magazines and newspapers. So she has been through quite a lot and really made this a passion of hers since 2001, when her son Sean took his life as a result of his video gaming addiction. So we're going to get right into our questions. And the first one is, I'm going to ask her, what are you referring to when you say online media and social media? What does that include?
Well, that includes, it's pretty broad. It includes the internet, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube, just being online, using smart devices like Alexa, Siri, Echo, anything like that, anything online.
Okay.
Yep. And you can also, when you're online, you can join communities or groups, you can browse, you can connect to schools. Um, you can use these apps to communicate with friends or members of the family or other groups. You can be an influencer. You can create videos for a living. So there's a lot of stuff that is now available, to anybody online. You don't have to be a famous Hollywood person to be seen in videos now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think later we'll be talking about some of the dangers of strangers that you can meet online. So we'll get into that. Why? Oh, here's the next question. Why is online media and social media dangerous?
Well, I'm going to say this. I have been here before online media and social media, and I've seen the changes to our world and our societies because of the online and internet. Um, I've seen our society deteriorate. I'll just give a couple things. For one thing, it will pull you from interacting with your family and your community, your own real self. You can be doing this, and this becomes more important to you than real people in real lives. And you don't realize it because I talk like to my children, I say, okay, can you put your phones away? And then they get like, well, why do I have to put my phone away? And I'm like, well, because I want to talk to you. And they're like, well, you can still talk to me, and so they don't understand it. So I think it's up to us as parents to, show them what a real relationship is, like what is real communication, not just sending a text or something like that, which is what they call communication today. I believe that the online and social media interferes with the bonding of children with their parents, because when parents give their children phones and iPads to keep them quiet rather than, communicating with themselves, and pretty soon the child will become dependent on the uh, device rather than the parents to soothe them. And so if they're crying or unhappy, if the parent doesn't give them the device, they keep screaming because, like, hey, I'm really not bonded to you anymore because I like this phone and this iPad. That's what I want. I don't want you. And it just really interferes with that bonding.
And,
It also
and for young kids, when we're talking about, well, not even young kids, when we're talking about kids that are growing from, say, infancy, toddlers, preschoolers, grade school kids, even high school and junior high school kids, they need to use their bodies and move in order to develop their brains. Their brains are not fully developed until like their middle 20s, like probably somewhere around, they say 25, 26. And during all that time, they're developing parts of their brain through making new circuits in the brain, and they have to engage in activity. Young children have got to play, imaginary play, the whole play of the putting things together and stacking things and seeing how things relate. It doesn't just happen with the eyes. If you're only watching it on a screen, there's a whole bunch of brain development that is not taking place. And the creativity, that best thing you kids can do as part of their growing up is to get out there and pretend with sticks and rocks and dirt and whatever
rock.
it is that they make into their people, all the stuffed animals on the sofa that are the school children, and then they pretend to be teacher and they teach them all. That is actually healthy development, whereas looking at that happening on a screen, and you'll see some of their visual skills might maybe be higher than they should be, but the other skills are lower. And then we also have the situation where the frontal and prefrontal cortex, which have to do, and those don't develop until they're in their 20s, correct? And those have to engage in other things other than video gaming to develop completely. And so then we've got the attention problems, and we've got the inability to problem solve, and the inability to restrain their impulses, and the inability to make reasonable deductions and inferences and process language and reading. All of these things require continual interaction with something other than a
Screen.
screen.
I think on that same line is using their imagination, because when you got the screens there, there's no imagination. It's all there for them. And when they don't have the screens, they have to think like, gee, what can we do today? It gets their mind going. Where if you just give them a screen, it just glosses over, and they're on this. They're sure not using their imagination, and they're not thinking on their own. I think another thing that I see as a danger is it removes the influence that parents and families have over their children's lives and the lives of each other. Because now, if you have a question, you don't go to your parents or your community, you go online.
Yeah.
So where's our influence? It's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows who's influencing them now. As we're seeing, there's a lot of crazy people influencing everybody about crazy things. So you got the whole world becoming their influencers instead of you. And so by limiting that access and keeping your communication with them open, you've got more influence with your loved ones.
And that
I think
totally makes sense. And we do know that some of the information that comes through different news sources and even different social media platforms has a particular political bent that is very skewed and can, omit other information. So I think a lot of the websites that they're looking at, a lot of the sources that they're going to, even, we had a lot of problems with during COVID, with a lot of the other side of vaccination, pro-vax, anti-vax. Pro-vax was all over there, and nobody was allowed anything that scientists even put up papers, from the top down, was kept off of the internet, was kept off of professional sites, was kept off of YouTube, kept off of social media, and even, Twitter was, censoring a lot of stuff. And we also know now with AI that there's the same bent with AI, is that the information they're feeding into the artificial intelligence is politically biased. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it tends to have an anti-Christian bias also. It's anti-Christian, it's anti-Western, it's anti-America, it's anti-free enterprise, it's anti, for our kind of, our republic, and it tends to be pro socialism and pro Marxism and pro one world government
Yes.
along with all that. So we are really, a lot of people are saying, why am I losing my kids to the
Yep.
church and to their faith? Well, but by the time they get their education and they have all of that bias put into them, and then they've, like you said, they've made their media, the online media, their source of information. That's all that they're getting. And then our influence, just like you said, just shrinks less and less and less. And we lose them.
Yep, we do.
Yeah.
I think another thing is that there's a lot of bullying done and hating done on social media that cannot be monitored by adults.
Yes.
And so that's affecting, everyone, because who wants to keep getting attacked? And that is just such a huge thing on there. People do stuff and say stuff to each other that they would never do in real life.
Exactly. And kids are committing suicide just from being bullied on social media, and especially when somebody says something about them that's a rumor or a lie, and then they send it out to thousands of other people and other kids. And
Yep.
then how do you, if you think about peer pressure, I remember being highly upset about just a few people, what they thought about me. And if you could imagine the whole school is looking at you like that, and a
Mhm.
whole bunch of people outside the school, how can you face that? That's you. And then you've got to have the relationship with the parents, to go to the parents for support and
Right.
figure out how to intervene in that. And the schools aren't always really good about social media stuff that happens outside of school. I know the laws haven't really caught up with that, even if it's school students, if it doesn't directly affect the school. A lot of a lot of school districts won't do anything about it.
And today the parents they stand up for their children, whether they're right or wrong. It's like, excuse me, but you shouldn't be doing that. Instead, they say, well, why are you coming over here and attacking us? It's just sad too. The parents are being influenced by the online internet and all the stuff that's coming through there. Um, and some of the monitoring, I mean, you as a parent cannot monitor this stuff, so you don't even know it's happening.
Yeah.
Um,
And the same thing about the porn, because I think the average age now that kids are exposed to some type of pornography is 6 to 8, isn't it?
yeah,
Right about there.
they want to throw up. I mean, it is. Yeah, it's so young. It's getting younger all the time. I'm going to be talking about that later about,
Okay.
that stuff coming in.
Okay.
Um,
And then
I,
just one more thing is that we know that when you talk about your comment about looking at the world now and asking yourself, is the world better? We know that there's all kinds of things. I mean, I use it all the time. I couldn't have done what I've done in my ministry. You couldn't have done starting your online gamers 12-step group without the internet. But so there's some good things about it, but there's so many dangers, and that's where we need to understand that. But also the mental health. The mental health of our children is declining quickly. It's getting worse and worse. I think the other thing is the loneliness. Most kids say they're lonely, that they don't feel that they have friends and they have people that they're close to. I can't remember the exact statistics now, but they're extraordinarily high. And also the levels of depression, anxiety are
yep,
just skyrocketing. And why wouldn't you be depressed if you had no friends and you felt completely ostracized and no connection with peers at all?
yep,
You would be.
yep.
Yeah.
Another thing that's happening is that a lot of people are posting videos and they are getting paid to do this. So it actually becomes their career.
Yes.
They get under the control of the apps and the companies, and they have to keep finding new content so people will continue to watch their videos so they can make money. They don't get a higher education because they decide this is what they're going to do with their life. And on the same line, people do outrageous, life-threatening things just to get people to look at their videos. Some of them die doing it. And this is just really a whole nother concept you have to look at. I've watched YouTube videos, and I can just tell the people are like, oh my God, what am I going to do next to keep people coming back? And they
Hmm.
try to put these titles on so you'll want to watch their videos.
Sure.
But that's another thing. And then it's like, well, if I didn't do this, I don't know how to do anything else. So then they feel like they're stuck, that, oh my gosh, they have to keep doing it because what are they going to do if they don't do that? So
Exactly.
it's just another thing um, that's coming out because of the social media and the online internet. Um, I think another thing, and you kind of touched on this, that people compare their lives to the lives of people that post on social media, and most of those lives are altered or made up.
Hmm.
But the the young person, they don't understand that. They think it's real. And then they think, well, gee, my life isn't like not that. I'm really must be a failure. I'm not going to Hawaii every other week, except for your family, of course. But, but yeah, and that makes them like, gee, my life is not like that. And then that's where they go into the depression, the self-esteem, low self-esteem, and they don't really know, they don't understand this is probably isn't real.
Right. And then a lot of those pictures are photoshopped. And
Yes.
so people, again, look absolutely beautiful and wonderful, but the Photoshop pictures, you compare yourself to that without being photoshopped. And then again, the lower self esteem. And then there's also the anxiety and the fear about what people do. They answer? Do they like my post? Do they not like my post? Everybody else gets a lot of likes. I don't get a lot of likes, and then their self-esteem goes back down again, and the anxiety about what it just goes on and on and on. Well, talk about how the
Not done.
online media is addictive.
Oh,
What
I'm just
does it do?
finished it. Just got a couple more things.
Oh, you want to tell
Uh,
me a couple more? You go right ahead.
yeah. Um, Another thing is that no one knows what's true anymore on the internet
Mhm.
and in social media because so much of it's fake. The young people don't understand this and
Mhm.
they think it's real just because it's there. They think, well, I read it on the internet, so it's got to be real. And that's not true. As adults who've been here before this, we can kind of like, not believe most of the stuff, but the young people, they they don't get that. And they think, well, the government says this. And so, we have to do this because the government says it, whether it's right or wrong. I mean, I don't think they even know what right or wrong is now. They think whatever the government says is right. And so to be able to differentiate what's real and what is not is very difficult
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And I think probably most of the stuff on the internet is not real anymore. And so I don't take too much, credit for what is on there. It's just like, well,
and
yeah.
and it's going to get worse. We'll talk more about AI a little bit later on in the interview.
Yep. And another thing, when you're on the social media, you're in the world, you're not in God's dominion.
Yeah, very true. Very true. So what about the addiction factor? We there's you have set up an online gamers 12-step program for support for the family members and support for the ones that have the addiction. Now, does that allow for any, not just gamers? Is it for anyone that has an internet addiction, or is it mostly for gamers?
Yeah, when we started it, we tried to include everybody, but then we had to kind of follow the other groups, and AA is just for alcoholics. And So we had to kind of limit it because it was getting too broad.
Okay.
So we were kind of missing our point, which was really to help the gamers. So we have a lot of information on there, and I've written, like I said, I've written the book. Um, I'm actually in my own life and more familiar with the online media issues because that's where I am. I mean, I use that more than I do games, and I can see where that can cause problems for me.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, mostly our 12-step group is for gaming addiction.
Okay. But
Um,
there are addictions, full-on addictions to your phone, addictions to TikTok, addictions to
Absolutely.
YouTube. There's addictions to just being on the internet and not wanting to get off of it. I mean, I think we all have a certain amount of addiction to our phones if we recognize that we're picking them up and compulsively looking at them and checking them and maybe nervously or anxiously if we're in a conversation and we're doing that. I mean, that's showing, but it actually, when you do it and it gets to the point of an addiction, let's differentiate between something that's like too much, which is usually called abuse but not addiction, or abuse or overuse versus addiction.
Mhm. I always say an addiction is if something is causing a problem in your real life. It's one straight question. Is this causing a problem in your real life?
Okay.
And, of course, a lot of people will say, well, no, because everybody's doing it. And one of the things I really found is I have to, even though I'm aware of all this, I have to constantly check myself. Like how many videos am I watching? Am I playing this game? Like this just actually happened like within the last year. I put like one game on my phone, a card game, and one game on Facebook. And so by the time it gets to this point, I had like 5 games on Facebook. And I'm like, and then I'm like, okay, so I was in our gaming meeting, and I'm like, okay, I got to get rid of these games because they're just, sucking up time, even though each game only takes like 1 minute.
Yeah.
But it just keeps coming on, very lightly. You don't realize it. And so you got to keep checking yourself. And you don't even realize how it can be affecting your life.
Yes.
If you weren't doing this, if you weren't watching the videos, if you weren't playing the card game, if you weren't browsing, what would you be doing? I mean, you could actually be doing stuff in your real life.
Right.
So I
And
think,
when I define addiction, I say it's like, yeah, it's something that you try to stop and you can't. So you want to stop and you find yourself unable. You find yourself doing it more and more. It's taking up more time. It's taking up more of your headspace, more of your thoughts. And then it begins to cause problems in some way in your life. Now, one of the ways it might not be causing problems with you because you're the addict and you're the one that's like enjoying what you're doing. But usually if you can, you got to ask yourself, does my significant other, my spouse, my partner, my children, is my parents, is somebody telling me this is too much? I'm becoming very frustrated or angry or upset that you're doing this much, then that's one of those indications, because you might be perfectly happy, like you said, you're the one having fun. But when people are starting to complain and people are starting to be upset with you, that is something you need to listen to. Or if you can't get a job because you start out thinking I'll go look for a job, and then the day's over and all you've done is done stuff online, and or at any point like that. So, but don't they do specific, and it changes the brain just like any other addiction, right? The pleasure center.
yeah, it creates neural pathways in the brain. So the more you do one thing, the bigger that pathway gets.
Mhm.
And so if that's all you're doing, that pathway gets bigger and bigger. And so whenever you have anything come up, like, gee, what should I do? Immediately your brain goes to that, like, oh, get on the internet. Um, it's just an automatic response from the brain because that pathway's already there. It's big, it's deep, you use it all the time. And so that's why we try to tell our people when they go into recovery, that's a whole new pathway being created. And when you start out, it's very uncomfortable. But because it's so small, it's just a little trail. But I keep telling them the more you use your recovery tools, the more you get back into your real life and start being there, the bigger that pathway is going to get. And, you know, when you go back, that other pathway will always be there, though. And you got to keep that in mind. So that's why you have to make the conscious choice. Okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to go back to my addiction, or am I going to stay in my recovery and use my tools?
Mhm.
So that is the choice. Once you learn about what recovery is, and that you decide that you want to do something besides your drug of choice, then you can start working on that recovery pathway in your brain and making that bigger and bigger. So
Mhm.
you'll have the choice, instead of your brain automatically switching you over to the addictive pathway. You can stop yourself, stop your brain, say, okay, I have a choice now. I can do this, or I can go back to my addiction. And
So
then that gives you more power over what you're going to do with your life, and that it will be a better life for you when you have the choice.
exactly. And they don't the online the people that do stuff online, the people that do the videos, the people that are we already talked about the games, so we won't talk about the games, but don't they do things purposefully to make them more addictive?
Absolutely. Um, there's a lot of things that they're doing, and they're always working and looking, the gaming companies, the app companies,
Mhm.
always looking for new things to get people ensnared in their little scheme. They offer different ways to do things. They tell people that it's easier, it's better than doing it yourself. You know, just ask Alexa. You don't have to look it up. Ask Alexa, you know. And this actually dumbs down people. And I'm totally aware of this. I don't have any of those smart devices in my home, because if I'm letting them do it, I'm not going to remember or know how to do it. So I'm going to keep doing it myself, so that I still have that talent, that I can still do that. Um, it's just you know, um, especially also when the public is making the videos to post. Um, when this becomes their job and career, they can't stop unless they're willing to start over from the bottom. The gaming or the app companies, YouTube and everything, know this, the TikTok, so that's why they give them the money, to encourage them to keep making them money. And
Mhm.
then it's like, a wheel where the person's on this wheel and he can't get off, because if he doesn't make these videos, what is he going to do? He's going to have to start from the bottom again. And, the companies are, they're just, I'm trying to see, conniving, and they want the customers, and they'll just do anything. It's like
Well,
they
and
don't.
they also have psychologists actually helping them do their programming and figuring out what different things they can do to make them more addictive and to make them want to come back again and again and again. I mean, this is all documented. So it is purposefully to get our children and us as adults addicted to everything online. And it's difficult because more and more of life is online. So it's becoming more and more normalized. And that makes it even more
Yes.
dangerous, because then that is, further isolation and all of that. What are some of the more toxic dangers, such as suicide, that have to do with online media?
Okay, these are just a few of them. There's depression, low self-esteem, there's confusion, exposure to explicit adult content.
Mm.
It creates hopelessness. Um, People who made social media their life have little in their real life to fall back on. That is like, you're just stuck here. Um, People will give up because they think they're not getting enough likes. They don't know what to do. This is all they know how to do, is, try to influence people and get likes. And then it's not happening. So then they're like, well, what can I do now? They don't even have in their mind, that, oh yeah, you can go on to school and try something else. I mean, that's not even in their mind.
Well,
They
and
just,
what
oh,
what
I
about
can't.
like exposure to like pedophiles and people that are not who they say they are,
Yep.
and they're literally out there trying to find the child.
That's exposure to explicit adult content. When you are on social media or allow your children on, it's like you're not just giving them access to the internet and to the world. You are giving the world access to them. So that means everybody out there can is like, oh God, here's another victim. You know, let's see if we could, entice them to do what we want. So it's really, what you are doing by getting out on the internet. And I'm going to kind of talk about that later on about what they're trying to do
Okay.
uh, to get us in there. But
Okay.
another thing is that there's influencers now. Influencers are people who are paid to go out and try to get other people to do things that they're getting paid for, like to get
Oh, yes.
certain products or, like go to a certain restaurant or go to a vacation spot.
Mhm.
And
And then those are kind of benign things because that's kind of like advertising. But then if you talk about the dangerous action, like little acts that they're supposed to try that people have, they get it gets to be kind of like a little phase where everyone's in, and it's kind of like the try the TikTok challenge, this or that, and then kids have done that and ended up dying. And they're also exposed to the porn stuff. It's different things that the kids are starting to do in their sexual exploration. A lot of it is quite shocking to parents. I've talked to parents who've literally had ended up with PTSD, finding some of the things that their kids were doing. And there were things that would never have been done if these kids would not have done these. And some of them are actually dangerous sexual activities that can kill them or deprive their brains of oxygen. And there's also all of the other stuff. So I mean, there's just so many things that can pedophile exposure with somebody pretending to be a child's age and then wanting to meet up with that child, and then that child is sexually molested or kidnapped, and just and then all of the other stuff too, and just quite a bit.
I mean, sometimes I think that, and I know this for a fact because they had it in one of their meetings about what they use to, to get people to stay on. They actually use the Bible, and there's like the seven sins,
Oh, the
and they
pride,
actually
gluttony, lust.
they
Yeah.
actually go through that and put those online in the games because it's the way the world is. That's what the world's attracted to. That's the worldly side of things. And so that's what they put in the games because these people are mostly of the world.
Yes.
And, so that's, Satan is really smart, and he's always using everything he can to get people away from God. And this is definitely one of the things that's really high on his list right now.
Yeah. Excellent. Actually, definitely, I can see that.
I
I,
think that the influencers, I wanted to say about that is many influencers have committed suicide because they just they get hopeless about they can't keep everybody happy. Because a lot of times when you're there and you're posting videos, you want, good comments. And then when people hate on them, and then they're like, they just get hopeless and they just say, I just can't do this. And then that's, there's a esteem is so gone, and that's their life. That's what they do for a living. And then they kill themselves. A lot of influencers have committed suicide.
wow,
So,
very tragic. And
mhm,
then there are some things coming that are even scarier in the near future. I just
right.
literally, I just cannot even go there to start thinking about Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse. Would you talk about what that is? That
Yeah,
really scares me.
yeah. he's been trying to push this, and this is one of the things that is happening when these companies get an idea, they actually try to shove it down your throat, whether you want it or not.
Mhm.
That's also happening right now, even more with the artificial intelligence. It's like, I don't need you to tell me the answer. I would like to pick, like now when you do a search, you get all these different options to pick from. And it's like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. But when artificial intelligence is answering, they just give you the answers they want to give you. And you don't have any choice. And you just have to say, oh, well, okay, that must be the answer, when a lot of times it isn't. So that's one of the things I don't like. The things with Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse, he thought everyone's was going to be, embracing it, and people aren't. What he was trying to do was create a universe, a metaverse. So, like, if you're going down your town, if you're walking down your town, in your town, and you see like an abortion clinic. Well, you don't like to see that. So you can actually, in this metaverse, take that out of the picture. So you can change your reality. So you
Well,
can make your reality, even though that's not reality, because you took it out, but that's only on what you're seeing. So
literally seeing, what are you wearing, glasses or something? And you're seeing that you programmed into your
yeah,
phone?
well, yeah, and it won't be there. But in reality, it is there, but you won't see it because you say, well, that makes me uncomfortable, so I don't want to see that. So you can take it out. So what they're trying to do is make everybody have their own verse. You know what I'm saying? Universe.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with reality.
Hmm.
It's what they make it themselves. And it's really scary. Also, what they do is they have a lot of bots who aren't real people. So you think you're talking to a real person, and you aren't. You don't know if the person's real or not.
Yeah.
And that's really scary because they make believe they're real. It's like, but here it's just the bot, like trying to sell you something or whatever they're trying to get from you.
Yeah. And the
So
same
that's
thing with the number of likes and influence, like followers that people have, can be highly skewed by bots and by them putting in fake likes and all that kind of stuff. So you can't even look at the likes and know for sure that those are each individual real people.
yep. And
So,
that's just the scary thing. It's fake. And you're not going to know what's real, and that's what they want. It's confusing you. It's like, how can you decide to do something when you don't even know what's real? And
mhm.
that's what's happening with our children, because they're under so much confusion now, they don't even know what sex they are. It's like, how can you live when you don't know what's real? And that's what they want. They want you to be confused because then they can have better control over you.
Exactly. Well, we've talked about the problems, so let's get to the solution. What how can parents protect their children in a world that uses technology for everything, even school assignments? I want you to be practical and realistic, because I think people listening are desperate for solutions that work. And I know just from my own grandchildren's lives and my daughter's struggle with them, they're still in grade school. And even when I have them at my house, I have these grandiose ideas when they come. We're not doing phones this time, no online gaming. And, I can't be with them constantly. And I'm even noticing that when they used to come, they would sit and talk to me while I was cooking. We would talk the entire time in the drive from where they live to here, which is long, and we would talk constantly. And I've noticed now that very easily, when I'm busy, the first thing they want to do is pick up their phones and do a game or do TikTok or something. And the conversation isn't like it was. And the minute I can say, put them down, get over here, we're going to talk. The minute that I take my attention off of them, they're back on it again. So, and it's frustrating. And then my daughter's frustrated because all of the sports, all of the coaches
Mhm.
and the team members use some type of social media or more to communicate with other team members and even with the coaches. There's no more papers anymore that hand out the team schedule or that hand out, what's going on. It's all online. So where do you,
There
what
are
do you do?
things that you can do. I mean, it's not easy. I know people who do this stuff, or I wouldn't be suggesting it. Um, Parents need to take a stand. They don't let others, including schools, continue to do things that are not right.
Mhm.
And that means influencing their children with whatever they want. So today, as this gets more and more crazy, uh, more and more people are standing up for family rights. And I applaud that because we all need to do that. Because if um, if the good do nothing, evil prevails. So if we're seeing something and it's affecting our children, our family, we have to step up and say, you know what, that is not happening here. Some of the solutions, you need to be an active, diligent parent. If the school systems you're forcing your child to go um, and use the computer, you can talk to the principal or the teacher and explain that your child's not allowed internet access. And if they want to communicate, you give them your email address as the parent, and they will communicate to you, and then you will pass that on to your child. So you can do that. You can do that as a parent.
Mhm.
They can't force you to be on that, the child to be on that, but you will still have that information because you will be the go-to person, not the child. Then you know what actually they're going to be asking your child and what they're asking the child to do, and the activities that they're going to be in. Another thing is limit your child's access to the internet, social media, and cell phones. And when they get home from school, the phones are put in a basket and you put that in a secure place.
Mm.
I know people who do this and it works. And the kid knows when they get home, that's where the phone's going. And I mean, the particular people I'm thinking about, they're from a blended family. So when the kid goes over to the dad's, they could use the phone. But they know that at their mom's, the rule is your phone goes in this basket and that's where it stays.
For the whole night?
Yep, for the whole night. They don't get it until they go back to school.
So they don't get any access to what all the kids are saying to each other and the back
Because
and
that's part
forth.
of the problem, what the kids are saying to each other, and parents don't know what they're saying to each other. I mean, that's when all that stuff can happen. Um,
Mm.
Also, as a parent, you need to secure your own phone because you have to lead by example. So, as a parent, you can't be on your phone while you're telling them they can't be on their phone.
Mhm.
So, if you're telling them they can't be it, you got to put your own phone away. And you got to realize you are in charge of your household and you will expect respect and obedience from your child.
Mhm.
And just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean it's right. And guess what? Not everybody else is doing it.
Yeah.
And, you know, they will respect you more than if you just give them the phone and they're being influenced by the phone instead of
Well, and
you.
I think you have to accept that you can't, there's a certain point that you can't control what they do when they're out of your sight, when they're not there, when they're driving, when they're driving in somebody else's car, when they're at someone else's house, although you can still know who their friends are. Don't you require also all kids, they don't have passwords on their phones, and if there's a password to anything, don't you have to have access to that password?
Yep. Another thing is don't even give them smartphones because that has access to the internet. You can get them flip phones. And these are available more and more today because parents are demanding flip phones because they don't want their child to have access to the internet.
Hmm.
That's
Okay.
another way They can like send it to school because the child will usually probably have to have a phone at school for something.
So
If
the flip phone only gives you the ability to make phone calls and to receive texts, but no social media, no
Nope.
online, no internet, no Wi-Fi,
Nope.
right?
Another thing is homeschooling. I know many people who have pulled their children out of the public schools because of what's being taught and that they're trying to take the control away from the parents
Mhm.
and making them do wherever this stuff is coming from, in
Yeah.
the schools.
And it's
It's
getting worse and
definitely
worse.
not coming from the parents, it's coming
No,
from up
right.
above.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
I
Or
think
below,
that,
or below.
right,
So,
exactly. Another thing is there's meet up with other families who have the same values as you are and become friends with them and support each other. I sent you, did you see the link I sent you about the community of kids who don't watch TV or have access to
mm-mm.
internet or even computers? Okay. So there's a whole community where the kids are just like back in the days. They don't have access to the TV, the internet, the computers. They don't play video games. And it says mostly the parents don't coordinate their playtime because they're played with each other.
Well,
But that can happen. It is happening. I will send you a link, and if you want to put that link
sure,
here so people can
absolutely.
see it, that it,
Okay.
it does happen. If you
Mhm.
want it to happen, you can. There's
And
also church communities, homeschool communities that you can become friends with so that, you know, what your child is seeing is, people in real life, not people on their phones all the time. And I'm
exactly.
just going to say this, if you start this thing about your children not having the phones as they're young, they think that they don't even question it because it's like, well, we just don't have the phones in our home. We talk to each other, and they don't even question it as they get older
And
because they
putting
just think, well, that's
laptops, yeah, and
cool.
putting a laptop or a computer in a child's room is asking for problems. So if
Absolutely.
you
There
do
should be
have a family computer, it has to be in the family room. It has to be where you can see what's going on at all times and they don't have this feeling. And now I know a lot of people though who've tried with a kid that has like an addiction, they'll try to put a password on the computer or disable the Wi-Fi. And these kids get pretty smart and they know how to turn the Wi-Fi back on. They know how to figure out the password or bypass it. They also know how to erase the history of the sites
Yep.
they've been on. If they're feeling like, I don't want you to know, they can literally, it's just, even I know how to do it. It's not that hard to erase history. And then now there are also like programs that you can buy and you can do age restricted access to certain things. What do you think about those?
I always find them confusing. I've never done it because it's like it sounds confusing, you know? It's like, okay, so I'm going to have to put this here and I'm going to have to put it on every one of their devices. And then I'm going to have to continually checking it to make sure that they haven't disabled it. Um, I know you can go to actually your internet provider and
Mm-hmm,
put those locks on, child locks.
mm-hmm,
I think that would be easier than trying to do it on every device.
mm-hmm.
So I
But
do
then
know
it
it's available.
blocks it for you as a parent too. And so there are things that you want to look up that you won't be able to look up because it just because there's a word that's in there that could be related to something that's more mature. So it makes it very difficult. So often I think people kind of give up and they just say, I can't deal with this because again, they need the access to the internet. But there are programs out there. I know Focus on the Family has some resources that they recommend for putting on the computer to prevent kids being able to look at porn and things that are just, too old for too mature for what they need to be looking at. So there are things that you can do with that.
And
But
I I think that now, because so much crazy stuff is going on online, um, that if you're a vigilant parent, you're going to see this and some of it is trash and it's being shoved down our innocent children's throats.
Yes.
It's can be life-threatening antics that our children are encouraged to do. So you just need to be smart and say, no, we're not participating. We're not, just say no. I mean, that's what they said on the drugs. Just say no. Just say no to the internet and online. No, we're not doing it. We're not participating. We're not going to get in this because it's not healthy. It's not good for us. I'm going to just say one thing that made a difference in my life. One little thing I did. It took me this long. I only did it last year with this watch.
Mm-hmm.
I love this watch. It I don't hardly use my phone anymore. Actually, I almost lose it. You can't play games or anything. I mean, you probably could, but how are you going to play games on that watch and go on the internet? It rings. You can answer phones, the phone call. If you don't want to answer it, you just don't answer it. But you can actually see who called.
Oh,
It is close. I mean, I've had it not quite a year, and I absolutely love it. It's changed my life. And
do you get texts? Do you get texts?
Yeah, it tells you when you get texts. You can take everything that's on your phone and you can say what of that goes onto your watch. So if you only want the text, if you only want the phone calls, I can actually answer phone calls on this watch.
That's a smartwatch.
Yeah, but it's so much different. I just hated my phone because I felt I was a slave to this phone.
Yeah, right.
So now when I got this, I'm like previewing it. Do I want to answer it? No, I'm busy. I'm
Well, not
busy.
only that, you don't have to carry it all around all the time.
I know. Is that absolutely? I mean, I would just highly recommend that, especially to parents so that, you just don't feel tied to that and, see how it works. Try it with your kids. I mean, that's just one thing that I have, the biggest tool I've ever seen that's helping me not be controlled by them.
Mhm.
Because when I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, do I want to answer that? Rather than say, oh, I have to answer it, the phone's ringing. So I just want to share that these watches are
Well,
absolutely
and that's
great.
a way for you to keep in contact with a lot of parents, like you said, the whole flip phone, but then the kids are having to worry about where it is. You really want your kids, because of safety, to have
Mhm.
a phone and that they can call you if they need you, or something is happening. So I think most parents think at a certain age, yeah, I want to be able to know my kid's okay, and ask them, is your game or is your practice going to end on time? And parent can get information. It just makes life much more efficient,
Mhm.
So I think that that's a good solution.
Yeah. So I just wanted to share that because it's like I said, I've only had it for not quite a year, but I just love it.
And then don't you have a people on your website, which we're going to give out at the end, and it will be in the show notes as well as the books, and then that link to that community you were talking about where the kids are not on any online media. Don't you have a list of therapists who understand, like, not only gaming and social media addiction, that
Yes.
people can?
We
Yes.
have a whole a section of people who will for therapy or counseling who actually work with people who have online problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I just suggest to people that, if you need that help, you, and if there's somebody because you can search by location on our
Mm-hmm.
internet. So if there's not somebody in your location, you can just, go to a therapist and say, hey, that we've got this problem. Do you work with people who have a problem with the internet?
Well, and I
Or
think,
yes,
and,
because
and
of
even with addiction, if you are dealing with somebody who has drug or alcohol addiction, you want a therapist who works with addiction, because you want that therapist to have a protocol and have some actual therapeutic
knowledge
programs
of
that
what an
they use.
addiction is,
Exactly. And then we want them to have a philosophy of how they treat an addiction. And then
solution.
same thing with if you're a family member who is watching somebody, your husband, your spouse, your husband, your wife, your child, adult child, your young child, because kids get really moody too and angry when you take, this stuff away from them, and they hate you. And so if you've got a problem with a child, adult child, or a young child, or anyone else, that you can become as obsessed with what that person is doing on online media as you could if that person had an alcohol addiction or a drug addiction. It can become an obsession for you to try to convince that person to stop, to try to convince that person
them. Yeah.
go do something else, to get off it, stop, come talk to me, come spend time with me, please eat dinner with the family. I haven't seen you. And it can begin to cause all kinds of problems in your own life. So there are
I'm
resources.
just going to say that about what you're just saying, because we have so many parents that come in with that, same thoughts. But when I tell them to do the tough stuff,
They don't want to.
They don't do it. They won't do it. Well, I don't want to hurt their feelings. It's like, okay, well, you'll be saving their life, and you'll be taking this elephant out of the room that you won't have to be dealing with all the time. But they just can't.
I know it's very hard, and that's where you need support.
You need to be strong.
And you need to be strong.
You need to say that this is for the good of your child.
Exactly.
It's going to be hurtful or hard at first. He's not going to like it, but in the long run, it's the best thing. It's the best thing to bring them back into their real life and get them off online, get them out of online. And another thing that we have on our website, we have like a list of almost 1,000 things you can do besides being online or playing games.
I love that. Let's put that in the notes. Okay, let's do the link to that article. That's the 1,000 things that are not online. That is awesome. I'm going to print that out, and I'm going to give that to my grandkids with a highlighter when they come visit me this summer, and I'm going to have them pick like 10 things that they're going to do instead of going to their phones. And then I'm going to take their phones away. I think I'm going to take them away and tell them this is our time. It's for us, and we're not gonna lose relationship interaction for your phones. And I think that's awesome. So let's link to that. And then as far as the family members that are struggling with an online gamer, we have your organization, which is the
Online Gamers Anonymous. It's olganon.org.
Okay.
And
I'll put the link to that. And that's for the family members of online gamers and also online gamers. And then
there's a section for each. So we have a section for the gamers in recovery, and then we have a section for the family members.
Yes.
And once you go into the family member section, it even breaks it down further. There's a section for parents. There's a section for spouses.
Okay.
There's a section for friends and acquaintances.
Okay. Perfect. So, but there's also other options. Like I teach classes with my 10 relationship changing principles that you can use to deal with any relationship problem. So any addiction, anything that is to excess, any type of relationship dynamic, dysfunction, narcissism, all of those things. But it includes people who are struggling with the amount of online gaming and media that a family member is doing. And they can take my class and get a lot of tools, and my website too, which is changemyrelationship.com, which is on this. So
I wanted to say one more thing is that sometimes the parents are addicted. So they are letting the children do it so they can do it.
Yes.
And that's the sad part. That's a sad part. But that's when we as grandparents see this, it makes us sad.
Yes.
It's like, so I don't know. I always find it easier to work with my grandchildren than my own children. That's where I think we really have the influence. And, when you get them over to your house and say, guess what? We're going to make a cake together instead of you.
Yeah.
instead of you being on your phone. But when you take that away and it's in the basket, they don't have it.
Yeah. It's
And it's
easier.
like, and then you got this whole list of things you're going to do in real
Exactly.
life.
I love
It's
it. I
like,
love it.
you're going to learn how to do stuff in real life, and it's going to see how much fun it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because they probably never even experienced
Yeah.
it.
I hate it when I go out to eat and I look over at a table and I see everyone at the table, children and parents, mom and dad, and children are all on their phones. And I feel like going over there saying, I'll keep those for a little while. And why don't you guys talk? You know? And
And the a thing is, they don't even know how to communicate anymore. And I'm going to say
yeah,
this, many years ago when we first started our organization, well, maybe it was like 5 years down the road, because we started our organization in 2002. But one of the articles that was written, they said in the future, the people who are hiring are going to be looking for people who can actually talk to each other, who have communication skills, because that is going to be so lacking
yes.
because people don't even know how to communicate.
Well, and then unfortunately, COVID put us all online in so many ways. And it's been a blessing. It's been a blessing for my classes because I've got Zoom classes now and can reach a lot of people who couldn't come in person. And so much is on there that we can do on Zoom. However, it also has put us back into that situation where, back online again. And then parents need to know too that prospective employers can look over their social media history and can see things that they've written, and people are more and more people are getting fired because they posted something on social media that isn't acceptable. It could be an opinion about something that's politically divisive or something that your boss doesn't agree with, or it could, which there's got to, the laws and the court cases have to catch up with this in some way. But then it also could look up things that your child has posted about, drinking photos or sexually provocative photos. And those things are out there forever and they can be found, and it can cause problems in the future forever as a prospective spouse and somebody who's vindictive. And also there are sites where you can publish stuff that are like pictures, nude pictures and sexual pictures that you've given to somebody, and then you break up with them and that person goes and posts those,
Yep.
and you've got to try to track those down and prove that they are vindictive. And then there's some things you can do and sometimes you can't. It's very scary. So anything that you put out there and give to somebody through that is potentially out there for life for that person to use against you in whatever the way they
can
want.
share it with other people, and they can share it with other people. I mean, it can be anywhere. You don't even know where it is.
Exactly. Yes. I know one woman who was married, and this was probably 10 years ago, and she and her husband took videos just of themselves, just as part of their relationship, right? And being
Mhm.
intimate. And they divorced, and he took them and he posted them with literal like porn sites and things where, and she found out, I don't know how she found out, I can't remember, but how shocking that was. And you think, oh my gosh, it's not even safe to do something like that with your spouse. You got to, with this, the potential ramifications of having all of this available is we've got to really think about it and be wise.
Very wise. Yes, that's just such a good final statement, because I'm saying that, as people are becoming more and more of aware of the nonsense that's out there on the internet. I mean, if you just take a look at our society and how crazy it is now, I said this would not have been possible without the internet.
Correct.
The communicating around the world, that's saying like, well, this is what I think, I think you can be a cat. So, you can be a cat, irregardless. I'm influencing you, regardless of what in reality. I mean, there's so much crazy stuff out there. I mean, we got to realize that if you don't want to be part of that, then don't be part of the internet.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, we've covered a lot. Show us your book again for those that are watching on YouTube. Okay, toxic dangers of online media, things you need to know about online media and electronic devices. And again, that's not out yet. When is it going to be out?
Um, don't have a date right yet, but we do have the table of contents.
On your website?
No, it's going to be out on Amazon. Not out exactly, but it's probably going to be the same. About this many pages, quite a few
Okay.
pages.
Okay. All right. And then also her book. And then we're going to do another interview based on her life, on Liz's life, and the different challenges that she's gone through, not just her son's dying from suicide from online gaming addiction, but the other situations she's gone through. And I'm really looking forward to that because that's my thing. I like dysfunction. Dysfunction intrigues me. I am interested in interpersonal relationships, and everybody knows my favorite movies are all about wacky dysfunctional families, and that I just so I'm looking forward to knowing about the dysfunction and the solutions, how you have.
Most of it was with relationships because, as I wrote the book, I was just like, I didn't really have any plan. It was like, okay, let's just see what comes out. And most of it was about my relationships.
Yeah. Well,
I thought that was interesting. I said, so that's like really foremost on my mind. It's relationships. And
that's the most important part of our lives. We think it's not, but it actually is. So, well, this has been a fun conversation. I hope people enjoy it. We're going to share it with Liz. She's going to put it on her social media. We're going to both put it on our social media. That sounds pretty hypocritical. We're going to use social media to get our message out, but we're doing it for the good. So, yeah. Anyway, well, thank you.
I appreciate this, and thanks for helping us get the word out because
you're so welcome.
People need to hear it. So
yes, I'm glad that I met you. So, okay, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and I just hope you share this with other people so that they'll know that there's some resources and some options. Okay, all right, thank you. Bye.